Welcome to Book Therapy, where every page is a journey, and every book holds a secret waiting to be discovered. Today, we open the doors to one of ancient Egypt's most mysterious texts, a map of the afterlife carved into coffins over 4,000 years ago. This is not just a story, it's a guide for the soul, known as the Egyptian Book of the Two Ways. Let's step inside this ancient roadmap to eternity. The Egyptian Book of the Two Ways stands as one of the most fascinating and mysterious texts from the ancient world, a unique testament to how the Egyptians envisioned death, the afterlife, and the cosmic journey of the soul. Dating back to the Middle Kingdom, roughly around 2000 BCE, this text represents an extraordinary milestone in the development of Egyptian funerary literature and religious thought. To truly appreciate the significance of the Book of the Two Ways, we need to place it within the larger framework of Egyptian history and religious practices. The Middle Kingdom was a period of consolidation and cultural flourishing following centuries of political fragmentation after the Old Kingdom. It was during this era that beliefs about the afterlife became more accessible beyond the royal family, extending to nobles and even commoners. This democratization of the afterlife is reflected vividly in the texts and artifacts from the period, and nowhere more strikingly than in the Coffin Texts, where the Book of the Two Ways is found. The Book of the Two Ways was not a standalone manuscript but rather a part of a larger corpus known as the Coffin Texts, magical spells, incantations, and religious writings inscribed on the interiors of coffins. These texts evolved from the earlier pyramid texts, which were reserved exclusively for the pharaohs during the Old Kingdom. The Coffin Texts marked a significant shift. The protective spells and knowledge of the afterlife journey were no longer limited to kings but were available to a broader segment of society. It is within this context that the Book of the Two Ways emerges, embedded in the very coffins that housed the deceased, serving as a vital guide for their soul's journey beyond death. What makes the Book of the Two Ways especially remarkable is that it constitutes the earliest known map of the Egyptian underworld, a sort of spiritual roadmap guiding the deceased through the perilous journey to eternal life. Unlike later funerary texts such as the more famous Book of the Dead, which provides extensive spells and prayers, the Book of the Two Ways focuses on the geography of the afterlife itself. It presents two distinct paths through the underworld, symbolizing dual routes the soul might take. These paths are marked with rivers, lakes, gates, and dangerous obstacles, each accompanied by spells and instructions to help the deceased navigate safely. The survival of the Book of the Two Ways primarily comes from tomb inscriptions and coffin surfaces, especially from burials located in the necropolis of Deir el-Bersha and other Middle Kingdom cemeteries. The inscriptions often include both text and schematic diagrams, one of the earliest attempts by any culture to chart a metaphysical landscape. This map is not merely geographic, it is deeply symbolic, reflecting the Egyptians' understanding of cosmic order, duality, and the eternal struggle between life and death. The significance of this text extends beyond its age or artistic innovation. It offers an invaluable window into the ancient Egyptian worldview, a civilization intensely preoccupied with the afterlife, immortality, and the maintenance of Mat, the divine principle of truth, balance, and cosmic order. The two pathways themselves can be interpreted as symbolic representations of choices, challenges, and the balance of opposites that defined much of Egyptian thought. The Egyptian Book of the Two Ways holds a special place in the history of religious literature. Originating in the Middle Kingdom around 2000 BCE, discovered mainly in coffin texts and tomb inscriptions, it marks a critical evolution in Egyptian funerary practices. It is the earliest surviving map of the afterlife journey, bridging earthly existence with the mysteries of death and resurrection. By charting these two paths through the underworld, the text reflects the profound religious beliefs of ancient Egypt, beliefs that would echo through millennia of spiritual thought, influencing funerary literature that followed, and captivating scholars and enthusiasts today. the Egyptian Book of the Two Ways stands as one of the earliest and most fascinating maps of the afterlife, a text designed not just to guide the deceased but to help them navigate the complex, often dangerous terrain of the Egyptian underworld. Unlike later, more elaborate funerary texts such as the Book of the Dead, the Book of the Two Ways is a schematic and symbolic blueprint, emphasizing the geography of the netherworld and the choices the soul must make to reach eternal life. Description of the two distinct ways or paths through the underworld. At the heart of this text lie the two ways, two distinct paths that the deceased could take as they journeyed through the afterlife. These paths are often interpreted as representing a fundamental cosmic duality that was central to Egyptian worldview: light and dark, life and death, order and chaos. Each path leads through a series of hazards and spiritual challenges, and the choice of way was not merely physical but symbolic, representing different spiritual states or modes of passage. These two ways are generally understood as a right and left path. The right path is often associated with the sun's journey through the day, symbolizing light, order, and positive forces. The left path, in contrast, corresponds to the sun's night journey, encompassing darkness, danger, and chaos. By traveling either path, the deceased participates in the cosmic cycles of death and rebirth, mirroring the sun god Ra's nightly descent into the underworld and his eventual resurrection at dawn. In some interpretations, the two ways can also be seen as complementary routes, different but both leading toward the ultimate goal of resurrection and eternal life. This dual-path concept reinforces the Egyptian idea that the afterlife journey is not straightforward. It involves choices, tests, and challenges that require knowledge, courage, and divine assistance. Symbolic geography, rivers, lakes, gates, and obstacles encountered on the journey. The Book of the Two Ways presents the underworld as a vivid landscape populated by symbolic geographical features that the deceased must traverse. Among the most prominent are rivers and lakes, bodies of water that serve as both obstacles and lifelines. Water in Egyptian mythology often represents the primordial chaos and the source of life. Crossing these waters can be perilous, requiring magical spells or divine protection, but also essential for renewal. The deceased may encounter lakes of fire or water filled with serpents and other dangers, symbolizing purification trials or threats to the soul's survival. Along the path are also various gates and thresholds, guarded by supernatural beings or protected by spells. Passing through these gates symbolizes the soul's progress and its ability to overcome barriers between the world of the living and the eternal realm. The terrain itself is filled with dangers, fields of fire, pits, and hostile creatures, each representing spiritual trials or cosmic forces that the deceased must overcome. These obstacles test the deceased's knowledge and moral purity. Only by successfully navigating these hazards can the soul continue toward union with the divine and eternal life. The dangers and protective measures, demons, monsters, and magical spells to overcome them. Central to the Book of the Two Ways is the depiction of numerous dangers that the soul faces in the underworld. These include demons, monstrous creatures, and malevolent spirits, each embodying chaos and the threat of destruction. The Egyptians believed that the journey through the afterlife was not passive; the deceased had to actively defend themselves against these forces. To do so, the book contains magical spells, incantations, and instructions that empower the soul. These spells often invoke protective deities, command hostile creatures to leave, or transform the deceased into invincible forms. For example, some spells enable the deceased to pass harmlessly through lakes of fire, to avoid being devoured by beasts, or to bypass traps and pitfalls. These protective measures were essential because without them, the soul could be destroyed or condemned to eternal wandering. The spells reflect the Egyptian worldview where magic was a powerful, real force. Words and knowledge could shape reality and guard the soul against evil. The inclusion of these spells alongside the map-like features of the text makes the Book of the Two Ways both a guide and a magical manual. Visual elements, layout of the maps and accompanying texts. One of the most striking features of the Book of the Two Ways is its visual presentation. Rather than just text, it includes drawings, diagrams, and maps, often inscribed inside coffins or tomb walls. These visual elements depict the two paths winding through the underworld landscape, marking key geographical and spiritual points such as rivers, gates, and dangerous zones. The maps often use symbolic imagery, like serpents, lakes, or gatekeepers, to visually communicate the dangers and necessary precautions. Accompanying these images are hieroglyphic texts, spells, explanations, and directions, which guide the deceased in how to interpret the map and navigate the journey. This integration of text and image creates a multi-layered guide that engages both the intellectual and spiritual faculties of the soul. The layout of the maps also reflects Egyptian cosmology and religious symbolism. Directions such as east and west are important because they represent birth and death, day and night, life and afterlife. The design emphasizes the cyclical nature of existence and the continuity between this world and the next. Purpose of the text: guiding the deceased safely to the afterlife and ensuring resurrection. Ultimately, the Book of the Two Ways serves as a guidebook for the deceased, designed to ensure their safe passage through the perils of the underworld and their successful resurrection into eternal life. In ancient Egyptian belief, death was not an end but a transition. The soul had to journey through the netherworld, facing trials that tested its worthiness. Without the correct knowledge, magical spells, and the ability to navigate the underworld's geography, the soul risked becoming lost, destroyed, or condemned to oblivion. The Book of the Two Ways combines cartography, religious belief, and magical practice to provide everything necessary for the deceased to triumph. By following the correct path, invoking the right spells, and overcoming the dangers described, the soul could reach the fields of eternity, join the company of the gods, and partake in everlasting life. In this way, the text reflects the profound Egyptian concern with death and the afterlife, revealing a worldview where cosmic order, duality, and magic intertwine. The Book of the Two Ways stands as a remarkable testament to the early development of these beliefs, laying the groundwork for later, more complex funerary texts and shaping Egyptian religious culture for centuries to come. The Egyptian Book of the Two Ways holds a uniquely profound place in the religious and cultural landscape of ancient Egypt. As one of the earliest known texts to map the journey through the afterlife, it reveals deep insights into Egyptian cosmology, their understanding of death and rebirth, and their conception of the soul's eternal voyage beyond mortal existence. In this section, we will explore the religious significance and lasting legacy of this enigmatic text, highlighting how it shaped and influenced subsequent funerary literature and the broader spiritual worldview of the ancient Egyptians. Insights into Egyptian cosmology and duality expressed through the two paths. At the heart of the Book of the Two Ways lies a powerful expression of the ancient Egyptian understanding of cosmic duality, a theme that permeates much of their religious thought. The two ways themselves symbolize the fundamental dual paths the soul could take after death, often interpreted as representing the dichotomy of life and death, order and chaos, light and darkness. This duality was not merely a philosophical abstraction, it was a lived reality embedded in the Egyptian worldview. The text lays out two distinct routes through the underworld, or duat, each fraught with unique challenges and dangers. These paths are carefully delineated, with detailed descriptions of geographical features such as rivers, lakes, and marshes, alongside mythical gates and guarded thresholds. These physical features correspond symbolically to the spiritual trials the deceased must overcome to achieve eternal life. The dual paths also reflect the Egyptians' broader belief in balance and harmony, known as Ma'at. Life itself was a delicate balance between opposing forces, and death was viewed as a continuation of this cosmic order, not an end. The Book of the Two Ways thus encapsulates the tension between opposing forces that the soul must navigate, between preservation and destruction, purity and impurity, life and the chaos of oblivion. Reflection of Egyptian beliefs about death, rebirth, and the soul's journey. The Book of the Two Ways serves as a crucial window into the Egyptian conception of death, not as a final cessation but as a transformative passage. The soul's journey through the underworld was understood to be perilous, requiring divine assistance and magical knowledge to secure safe passage and eventual rebirth. In Egyptian thought, death was a gateway to a new phase of existence where the deceased would be judged and, if found worthy, granted eternal life in the field of reeds. A paradisiacal afterlife mirroring the idealized Nile Delta. The Book of the Two Ways provides the map for this spiritual expedition, offering the deceased a guide to avoid deadly traps and hostile beings that threaten to destroy the soul or imprison it forever. Moreover, the two paths can be viewed as symbolic representations of the cyclical nature of life and rebirth, closely tied to the sun's journey. Just as the sun god Ra traveled through the night sky and the underworld before rising again each dawn, so too did the deceased soul undergo a nightly journey through darkness toward renewal. This cosmic parallel imbues the text with theological weight, linking human fate to the eternal rhythms of nature and the divine. The inclusion of spells, protective prayers, and ritual instructions alongside the maps reflects the Egyptians' belief that knowledge was power, even in death. Mastery over these spiritual instructions ensured the deceased could navigate the treacherous underworld and participate in the cycle of rebirth, echoing the promise of immortality that was central to Egyptian religion. Influence on later funerary texts, the Coffin Texts and the Book of the Dead. The Book of the Two Ways did not exist in isolation, it laid the groundwork for a flourishing tradition of funerary literature that evolved over centuries. Its motifs, maps, and magical formulas found echoes and expansions in later texts, notably the Coffin Texts of the Middle Kingdom and the famous Book of the Dead of the New Kingdom. The Coffin Texts, inscribed on coffins rather than pyramid walls, democratized access to the afterlife by extending funerary spells and protections to non-royal individuals. These texts incorporated and expanded upon the concepts introduced in the Book of the Two Ways, offering a more comprehensive and detailed collection of spells aimed at ensuring safe passage through the underworld. Later, the Book of the Dead synthesized and elaborated upon these earlier traditions, becoming the most well-known Egyptian funerary text. It presented an extensive set of spells, prayers, and illustrations designed to guide the deceased through the perils of the underworld, culminating in judgment before Osiris. The influence of the Book of the Two Ways is evident in the continued use of symbolic geography and the emphasis on navigating spiritual trials, underscoring the foundational role this early text played in shaping Egyptian beliefs about death and the afterlife. Modern discovery and scholarly interpretations, the role of Egyptology in understanding the text. The modern rediscovery and interpretation of the Book of the Two Ways have been pivotal in advancing our understanding of ancient Egyptian religion and funerary practices. The text was first identified in Middle Kingdom coffins discovered in the necropolis at Deir el-Bersha and other burial sites, with scholars painstakingly piecing together fragments of inscriptions and illustrations over the past 2 centuries. The breakthrough work of Egyptologists in deciphering hieroglyphic texts and contextualizing them within Egyptian cosmology has revealed the Book of the Two Ways as a crucial transitional text bridging the exclusive pyramid texts of the Old Kingdom and the more democratized Coffin Texts and Book of the Dead. Its detailed maps have been recognized as among the earliest attempts to spatially represent the afterlife journey. Contemporary scholars continue to debate the precise meanings of certain passages and the symbolic significance of the two paths. Some interpret them as representing moral or spiritual choices, while others emphasize their cosmological and ritual dimensions. Advances in archaeological methods and the discovery of new coffin inscriptions continue to shed light on this text's complexity. Contribution to the broader understanding of ancient Egyptian afterlife concepts. Ultimately, the Book of the Two Ways offers invaluable insight into how ancient Egyptians conceived the afterlife as a complex, navigable realm rather than a vague or mystical destination. It highlights the interplay between geography, cosmology, magic, and morality that defined Egyptian religious thought. By providing the earliest known cartographic representation of the underworld, the text challenges modern perceptions of ancient spirituality, revealing a sophisticated system of beliefs focused on ensuring order, balance, and continuity beyond death. It underscores the Egyptians' profound concern with immortality and their reliance on knowledge and ritual as tools to transcend the mortal condition. The legacy of the Book of the Two Ways is thus both historical and spiritual. It shaped a rich tradition of funerary literature that influenced Egyptian culture for centuries and continues to inform modern scholarship about the complexities of ancient Egyptian religion. Its maps and mystical journeys resonate as a testament to humanity's enduring quest to understand death, the afterlife, and the eternal journey of the soul.